We've heard from a couple comic stores that say that sales are up. Uh, Wait, what? Really? Up? Yes, actually up. That coming out of the pandemic, looking at things right now, sales are, in fact, stronger for some titles. Is there truth to this? Is this some kind of weird fever dream? Or people like hopped up on antidepressants and they need their comics? What's going on? Let me try and break it down for you here. Hey everybody, this is Perch. Thanks for listening to the channel. By the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I really appreciate everybody who subscribes to the channel, hits like, shares with a friend, all that kind of stuff. Why not share with a friend? I'm not toxic or weird or infectious, as far as I know. I've been tested recently. Nothing's burning, so go ahead and share. It won't hurt. It won't hurt anything. And the audio quality is like 50% of the time good. So you got that going for you too. At any rate, there's been a couple reports kind of here and there about comic sales are up. And I wanted to provide some context around that statement because there's a couple other things that seem contradictory that are also floating around, like about 20 to 25% of comic stores have actually closed since March. What's true? Well, again, we won't have perfect numbers. In this case, we're just kind of reading from trends, but kind of all of this stuff is true, and it does make sense if you think about it. The first kind of step, let me get the bad news out of the way first. Yes, from what we are hearing and what we're seeing, again, anecdotally, we can look at bigger cities, especially cities that have had or have multiple comic shops in them. We're seeing about a 20 to 25% stores not open. Now, here's what we don't know. First of all, we don't have a precise number. This is a rough rule of thumb. Two, there's a lot of shops that have moved to online only or are haven't closed but are closed, meaning maybe they're in hiatus at the moment, they're waiting for kind of things to rebound a little bit, maybe they're open just a couple days out of the week, and just so it's hard to say exactly what's open, what's shut, and what's closing. But if you look at retail in general and the restaurant industry and other places, by the time this is all said and done, I've heard estimates of everything from 20% of businesses closed to, in the case of the restaurant industry, 40%. Places like Seattle, which has had a large number of problems with the pandemic and outside of it, is estimating that a lot of their restaurant and retail business in the downtown area could see a reduction by 50% or more in some cases. Will that actually happen? I mean, not long term. In general, what's going to happen is some businesses are going to go out. There will be a recovery period. Some businesses will come back in. That's how life works. But regardless of all that, there is a reduction in comic shops. Okay, so then why is it that some comic shops are reporting an increase in sales? Well, there's kind of two reasons for that. And the first one is obvious, and it's related to what I just said. Can you guess what it is? Yeah, that's right. It's, if you have 3 comic shops in a town and one of them closes, the other 2 comic shops are going to see an increase in business because the customers are going to flow to that shop. And that is part of what's happening. We are seeing some shops increase business because, hey, there's one fewer game in town, or sometimes a few, or more than one. In the Los Angeles area, I know several comic shops have closed. And so the other shops that are still open are seeing a pickup in business. Now, there's no way to tell exactly, and nobody has the numbers, and anybody who does is lying to you. If the shop that is closed, or sorry, the shop that's open, if it's seeing a percentage of increase equivalent to the shop that closed, just common sense tells us that's impossible. You're not going to see a one-to-one business transfer over, but you are seeing at least some. But there's another thing that's happening that if you get deeper into the numbers, it's funny. I've now heard this a couple places that what's happening at the comics level is that the top comics, the comics that were selling in the 60,000 and higher range roughly, those comics are seeing a boost. They're going from 60,000 to 65,000, or well, I mean, that's an aggregate of the entire comic industry. Let me take a step back. The top comics are selling higher. we're seeing a pickup on the top comics. That's good news, except we're also seeing a reduction, and from, again, anecdotally, what I've heard from shops, a deeper reduction of the middle and the lower selling books. So if your book is coming in between 20,000 or, prior to the pandemic, 2019 timeline, your book was selling between 20,000 and 50,000. Those books seem to have been hit. Those books are eroding. It's in a weird way. If you want to get kind of take a bigger stance of it, it's sort of like the upper class is succeeding, the lower class is getting by, and the middle class is vanishing. That is, in effect, what's happening to comics. The lower selling titles are not selling as well. Now, why is that? Well, part of the reason is that there were always some percentage of comic sales that are habit. Customers are coming in and, they may not necessarily like Captain America, let's say, but they have every Captain America. They've been collecting Captain America for the last 30 years. They don't want to stop now. So they've had it on their pull list. Maybe they're not a fan of the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, or I can pick on some other book if you like. I mean, we can go with Batman Beyond over in DC, or Aquaman, or whatever we want to do. Some lower selling title. And there are people who have been collecting it out of habit because they want to just complete their run, or maybe they just never bothered to take it off their pull list. And with the pandemic, with the crunch in finances and everything else, they're not buying it anymore. They've made the choice now to actually go ahead and take it off. So we're seeing somewhere, again, probably around 20 to 30% reduction in that middle tier, or the middle class of books. The books that we're selling at the 10,000 range or below, those books have their core audience, and their core audience is still showing up to buy their books. So we're not seeing much of a change there, but that middle tier we are. Now, why is the top tier getting more purchases? Why do we see an increase beyond just maybe people coming in from other shops that have closed? Well, because in a time where people do want something to read, they still want to be involved in comics, they're spending a little bit less time experimenting with multiple titles, and they're choosing to put their money with the big books that are getting marketed. And there's been a couple big books, if you think about DC and what they've done with Joker War and Death Metal, and over in Marvel, even Empire, there was such a starvation of comics through the pandemic that when they start coming back, the stuff that people are going to gravitate to are most likely the biggest books being marketed. And so you're seeing a boost there. Now, it remains to be seen if that will hold. Chances are some of these top-level books will keep this new audience they've got if they're ongoing series. If they're event books or temporary, that could potentially spell bad news for comic companies that were relying on this, we make a lot of money out of events. If you see a boost out of events and a reduction of the ongoing middle tier, and then the events end, then you've got a problem. And also, when you go to the next event, you're going to have to try and hook those guys to come back. So that's, in effect, what we're seeing. Everything I've told you is somewhat anecdotal. Comic-Con is going to, of course, have some numbers we can look at longer term. Hopefully we get, some digital information in soon. But in general, that's what we're seeing. And it's an interesting phenomenon. It's too early to say whether this is all good news or all bad news, but certainly this kind of shift, if not properly managed, meaning the comic companies that don't come in and they actually try and do a good job of preparing for this new world, of reacting to the environment that's changed around them, that can spell bad news. So just wanting to keep you guys up to date. This is a little bit what's going on in the comic industry. It's interesting to see it kind of fluctuate and work this way, but would love to hear if you have any theories on this. What do you think's going on, and what do you predict is going to happen next? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. Like, subscribe, like I mentioned before, introduce to a friend, pass it around like, I don't know, insert some analogy here. Follow me on social media, send me an email, but most importantly, as always, thanks for listening.